We should make the theme similar to this. There's this really great movie, and it has a profound impact.
Oh my god, this is gonna be a joke.
No, it's this dog.
No. This is not serious. You're not being serious with me.
You got a problem with Air Bud?
Oh my god.
There's a lot to learn from Air Bud.
I've never said otherwise.
I mean, this is a competitive movie. And is there a stronger competitor than a golden retriever who makes a basketball team and wins them?
Welcome to Plot Matrix. This is the second episode of our new follow-along screenwriting podcast. And today on the show, we're going to announce the winner of last episode's 4 movie ideas and the results of the poll. And then we're just going to get a little bit into the brainstorming. I, myself, am Jackson Casimiro, your host, and this is Brian Smail III, your screenwriter.
Hello. Good to be back.
You see that, Nat?
I do see that, Nat. Kill it.
Where'd it go?
It's right in front of you. I think it's on the mic. Just hit the mic really hard.
Let me start by saying we had a lot to get through last episode, and from us both having needed to watch it a million times, it was really clear that we were like trying to stay focused and on time and everything. So I think that it's nice that this will just be a looser brainstorming session. That's just a little bit more casual.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that we did it in this manner. I'm glad that we were able to get through all of those ideas in one episode. And it was also awesome to hear all of the feedback from the people watching and listening. I had a lot of different opinions, as I'm sure you did as well. A lot of people who were very adamant on one idea or the other. So I'm very excited to move forward on the one that was chosen by the people with no manipulation from us whatsoever.
Yeah.
True democracy.
Yeah. And it wasn't that close. So I do feel good about following through on this idea. But before we announce the winners, is there anything you want to say about the podcast itself? We've got some upgrades here.
Yeah, I got a new arm because I have the attention span of a child. So the ability for me to stand still for a prolonged period of time is very difficult.
Yeah.
So now being able to move forward and back is going to be a lot better for me.
Right. And I already upgraded my mic because I was unsatisfied. And, I was unsatisfied with being on the same playing ground as you. And so
okay.
This is one-upping you by just a little bit. So if I sound better, that is why.
You know, this mic is classic, though. This is the mic that got me into YouTube when I was trying to do Elgato MW2 video game captures with a blue Snowball Yeti. So this thing has character.
Wow, you had a snowball.
Yeah, that's what this is. It's the same mic.
And then we also added a wide angle, which it's a pain in the neck. 3 cameras is a lot of work. So if you're not already, watch on YouTube. It's the best place to experience it because you can see both of us at the same time. All right, you want to get into the winner now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right,
I'm going to make you announce it, okay?
Okay, that's fine. Let me so we did some math, which is shocking for us. And we decided to do the percentages based off the votes of all the people. So I'm going to do a reverse order, and I'm going to just say the first place at the end because I hate when it's like 2.
Okay,
I
so
wonder what 1 is.
Okay, so you're going to do a countdown.
Yeah. So
right.
In 4th place, we have, with 18% of the vote, How to Escape the Friend Zone.
Okay, which was your pick.
That was. I
Yeah.
guess nobody wanted to hear my dating knowledge. And I can't blame them.
Yeah. No, I think that was universal. And I think that the 18% who voted for it should feel bad.
I'm going to say no because mostly they're my friends that voted for it. So those of you who are really standing tough with me, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. We'll see if they continue listening.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. What was next?
In 3rd place, with 19%, a whole percent more, goes a long way, we have $1 billion bracket. And I'm just gonna end the podcast here because I actually don't want to announce the rest of it. I don't want to hear anything. Okay, go glow. I will give you 15 seconds to gloat right now.
I'm not gonna sink to your level. I'm not gonna gloat. No victory lap. I think people are just on the edge of their seat to figure out which of my ideas won.
Your 15 seconds is up. Okay, so I just want to say I want to make this distinction. When we were first coming up with the idea for this podcast, I was brave. I put myself onto the limb and I sent Jackson my log lines and I said, hey, these are the ideas that I'm bringing. And then he hid behind his little computer screen and kept his in a secret note. And then about a day or 2 before, he uploaded them into the document so I could reference them.
Because I wrote them a day or 2 before. because I had to make sure they were more engaging, better written than yours.
So
You showed your cards too early.
I will commend you for the two best ideas. I underestimated how many friends I have. I thought I was really just going to win the popularity contest, but even my own friends betrayed me, including my sister, which that one cuts deep. Besides that, congrats.
Thank you.
Proud of you.
All right. So, the movie idea for the season, the script that we will be writing.
The winner with 35% of the vote, more than a third, is Linwood Treasure Co. The Last Resort had 27%. It was a good second place contender, but the whole adventure aspect, I think, is what a lot of people latched onto. So I'm very excited to get into this idea with you.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think that it was pretty clear that Linwood was going to be the most fun, that we were going to have just a really good time writing it. We can make it sort of an ensemble cast with a ton of different characters, and it's gonna keep me interested.
I'm sorry, I cannot take you seriously with this costume in which you've brought today.
Oh, this?
Yeah.
It's just that the lights in here, the studio lights are really quite bright.
Oh yeah,
So
of
I
course.
feel like I needed this, but I'll just squint through it.
Yeah, please. It's better for me over here. I don't need the constant reminder. I'm already gonna have to work on
Yeah.
this idea for the
Okay.
next 6 months.
Let me read the log line just to remind everybody, and then let's just get into our brainstorming. A company has created a whole industry around designing high stakes treasure hunts. Contestants pay a huge entrance fee to get the initial clue, setting them out on a global adventure to unearth the prize.
So we obviously talked in pretty general terms in the first episode, but I want to see if there's anything now that we're fully getting into this that maybe you wanted to share in the 1st episode that you think is extremely worthwhile now.
So I think the main thing is that I just want to clarify what the idea literally is, what the treasure company does. And so I imagine that the treasure company operates itself like a business. There's not some super wealthy person that's just giving all their money away in some creative way. So, in order for the financials to work out, let's just imagine that the entrance fee is like $100,000, and there's at least over 100 contestants. Let's say 500 contestants, which would enable them to easily set the winnings at $10 million. So, from the contestant's perspective, there's $100,000 entrance to a $10 million prize. So, pretty good return on investment if you were to win. And what the company does is, let's say, every year, every 4 years, whatever, they build this whole global treasure hunt. They set up this whole Rube Goldberg machine of all these different clues, and then the contestants pay their entrance fee, and all Linwood does is give them that initial clue. And they have to decode it and then go find the next one and the next one until they eventually find what is literally buried gold or buried cash, their monetary prize that they can redeem. And so it operates like a company, and it has created a whole industry that also operates often like companies, because in the same way that Linwood is in it to make money, the other companies can make money. And so I imagine there's maybe sort of an incumbent. There's some people who do it for sport.
What do you mean by incumbent?
So,
like a previous winner?
Yeah, so I imagine that there's one incumbent that's sort of one of the teams that competes every year or every time there's a hunt, and they're sort of known as the people who always win. And it's because a lot of these clues maybe involve cartography or linguistics. It's a multi-medium like academic thing that you need to solve, and physically travel and exert yourself to go on expeditions around the world to solve the treasure hunt. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it's not some Hunger Games audience type thing. It's just this mysterious, prestigious company that's putting on this contest. So with that,
Oh, we're really getting into it now, huh?
it was my idea. So I want to make this episode a little bit looser. And but in the previous, what are you laughing at?
Nothing. It's just you
I'm just trying to
you
get the sleeves off.
you struggling to undo the shirt, going looser. Really set me for a
This is
loop.
an Indiana Jones costume, okay?
Okay,
All
sure.
right.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going for like Park Ranger.
No, so because it was my idea, I want to give you a little bit more space this episode to react to it and tell me what comes to mind.
I think for this episode, kind of what I want to focus on are the baseline generics.
Yeah.
And for that, I think touching on what Linwood was, and is attempting to be the treasure company itself and somewhat of the industry. I think we should look at that. I think we should look at just a few possible characters.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing as this is a travel story of worldwide global involvement, I think we should talk a little bit on location. And we could have a little discussion on theme later, but we'll get into that when we get into that. But for me, those are the main things that I want to talk about today, if that works with you.
Okay. Yeah. Because I think next episode we'll get into more of the actual logistics of the treasure hunt because that's sort of the
foundation.
That's
It's what
the
everything's
foundation.
going to build off of.
So what do you want to get in first? What
I want to
what
do? Let's
questions
start
do
with
you have?
Linwood. I want to start with Linwood because I think there are some easy characteristics that we can look at for Linwood that might influence the rest of the story and the characters that we choose.
Right.
Already, kind of what I'm getting from Linwood, and something that you mentioned in the first episode is the history of it all,
Mm-hmm.
right? And seeing as they're more of an older company, they've been setting this up. There seems to be this prestigiousness that's just oozing out of every orifice of this company.
Right.
So does that mean you're anticipating that this is something that goes on every year, or is this something? Because for me, it feels like it should be every 3, 4, 5 years, sort of like the World Cup, where
Yeah.
there's time for people to find out about it, new generations can come up and learn about what it is, or the competitors themselves, people who weren't old enough before to really make an impact, are now starting to take the stage in full light. So I think that it would make the most sense if this is something that is not as convenient or recurring as every year or every 2
Mhm.
years. I think there needs to be time for teams to prepare, because that's the other thing. The competitors are preparing for whatever. They have no idea what it's going to be, right? Besides that first clue whenever they get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine it would take years of, seeing when the contest is going to come up, trying to organize that travel, trying to get the right people on your team for anything that could happen.
Yeah, and I think that comparison of every 4 years is actually good because I've been calling it the company, but it's a company in the sense that like the Olympic Commission is a company or the NFL is a company. We don't think of those things first and foremost as companies. They're
bigger. They're entities.
leagues, they're entities, they're institutions.
That have many companies within them. I mean, every NFL franchise is worth billions and billions.
Right. So probably a better comparison is something like a league, but with the prestige of 100+ year history. And something that we should get into, whether or not it shows up in our film, is creating some depth and lore to Linwood. I imagine that they might have maybe one year the treasure was never actually found. Like, oh yeah, 97, they never found that treasure. It's still out there buried somewhere in the world. I think that there's probably been scenarios where people have disappeared.
Yeah, there seems to already innately be something with this specific competition and why this is the one that we're choosing of all the years that this has happened. It almost feels like there could be a rebranding of Linwood for this particular competition, where if those types of behaviors were happening, where people go missing or somebody gets hurt or the treasure's never found, they obviously want to keep their competitors coming back. And they also seem like such a, you're saying 100-year history. There's that sportsmanship where everyone is trying to be respectful competitors. And it almost seems like if they had leaned away, if the competitors themselves had started to lean away from that competition, Linwood would want to step in and correct course. It could pave an avenue for us to look down for this type of story, where maybe the company, which is hands off, is trying to make sure that they're going back to their roots, but the competitors themselves, whoever they are, might be just ramping up everything that had been boiling for years and years and years of this competition. And I know you had said something about the incumbent. So, there could be something about how this incumbent has won so many times that the other competitors are starting to really feel it. And they feel like they have no chance whatsoever. So
Hmm.
there could be a lot of tension amongst the people and the company themselves as they're trying to reset the course and make it the good old competition that everybody wants to invest in, as the competitors themselves, all they care about is the prize.
I liked what you said that the thing that they could be doing is trying to shake the incumbent from being the winner. And maybe they've continuously tried to do that, but the incumbent is just one step ahead of them, partially because they keep amassing more and more money. And it's funny calling it the incumbent because it's almost like, okay, I'm not going to shy away from critiques of capitalism. That's just in my blood, okay? There's generational wealth behind the incumbent. And so I think part of it is going to be fun because they can have a hangar, they can have their own private jet, they have their linguists, they have their boat with sonar. They've amassed all these resources, this generational wealth, in this position as the incumbent. And as much as Linwood or the government or whatever um, tries to shake them, they keep outwitting them. And this could be a year that's the incumbent doesn't win. I think obviously the incumbent doesn't win.
Besides the monetary prize, is there anything else that comes from winning? Because for me, what I'm already thinking about is part of what could have kept this incumbent keep going and going and going with is if there was an auto bid, if you won the competition.
Is
So
auto bid like a sports term?
kind of, yeah. The best way to think of it, we're gonna just talk about the World Cup a lot, as it's
Oh, the World Cup.
the World
Yeah.
Cup has host nations, obviously,
Yeah.
and whoever hosts it for that year is automatically qualified for the tournament. So
Mm.
typically, it takes 3 to 4 years of qualifying games in order to make it into the tournament. But if you're the country that is going to actually be hosting it, then you're automatically in. You don't have to do any of that.
Okay, so that's actually interesting because let's say the company has a hard cap on the number of seats. I think that makes sense to do to sort of keep an element of scarcity to the competition. So if that was the case, either there could be an auction for the ticket instead of a flat entrance fee, or it could be sort of a raffle. And so it sort of changes up every year who is able to buy in to the competition. And so if there is, what you're calling an auto bid, if the incumbent wins and then the $100,000 may not mean a lot to them if they just won $10 million, but it guarantees them a slot every single year so they can have this perpetually active company that is just up and running. The company is designed to win every year.
And this can go to the shakeup as well, where it's maybe this is the last year of the competition underneath these rules, where you're no longer going to get the bid. We go to that raffle, whatever it is, and so this is the last chance for the incumbent to like really get some money and be certain that they're going to make some money. If they were to walk away from it now, they could have already been up like $100 million, whatever it is, you know. So this last year means something more to this company that has won time and time again because they may not know if they're going to get it again.
Yeah. It could also be so different that like they crashed their helicopter, members of their team quit, and basically the company is falling apart over the course of the hunt just because they're finally being outwitted and they're not prepared for it.
Right. I think now we're already starting to kind of get into it, so let's just jump right into the teams themselves.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the incumbent. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add.
Only in comparison to the protagonist, because I think that they're obviously the antagonist.
Yes.
Would you want us to sort of defy expectations by having like a more ensemble cast without a clear protagonist and antagonist, or do you think that we're down the right path by calling the incumbent an antagonist and then designing a protagonist?
It's going to be easier for us to latch on to one team and then have other teams that are maybe likable or maybe not so likable, but not quite to the level of this massive corporation that just keeps winning. But our team that we have in hand is the best balance of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're going down the right path of protagonist, antagonist, especially for this. The only other antagonist that I can envision would be if we put Linwood fully into the story itself. But I don't think there's room for it. I don't think it's
Yeah.
necessary either. I think it works better as being this just overarching.
Faceless.
Yeah, faceless. I think it works so much better to let it be that hands off and let it just be about the people and what they're willing to do, where they're willing to go
Mm-hmm.
in order to end this hunt on top.
Right. So can I pitch you on a possible protagonist.
No. Yeah, of
Well, I'm
course.
worried that if I say this, it's gonna be hard to shake because it's
Okay,
so
that's fine.
apparent, obvious, you know. At one point, Linwood could have started offering a scholarship entry. And the scholarship could go out to different people over the years, people of prominence, intellectuals, whoever. And let's say instead of not only do you get a spot, right? Instead of owing the $100,000 entrance fee, you're given $100,000 to help you compete and get resources in order to follow the treasure. And so every year, or every treasure hunt, there is an obvious underdog. And if there is some media coverage of this, then there's always someone who's covered. You know, the underdogs, do they have what it takes to go up against the 500 other teams without all the resources? So,
The only thing that I would say is maybe we should stay away from the word scholarship. I
mhm,
get the idea, and I think the idea is justified. Of we have a courtesy entry
yeah,
of the company itself. Scholarship is just so connected to schooling that I feel like we might lose what we can do with this team. You know, if we have a random group of people that not aren't all students, but you know, it's made up of a couple students or a couple people from this profession, and it has to have like one leader. Whatever it is, could be a lot of fun. But I agree, this would make sense for our protagonist that we follow. That it is this total Cinderella story, no shot,
yeah,
no way that they're going to win the competition. And I think this actually makes sense too. Of our protagonist doesn't need to win the treasure hunt. Their real mission really could be just getting in the way enough and getting close enough to the actual prize that they cause the meltdown of the incumbent.
yeah. Or personal fulfillment. You know, we can
Yeah.
obviously give them emotional and social objectives
Well, this
outside
whole
of the money.
thing, and we're going to bounce around here. This whole thing is so cool because it's travel. It's amazing travel. You're
Hmm.
going to get to see all these parts of the world. But I think this is actually a good transition to the point that I wanted to make of, for me personally, I'm not that interested in going into the major wonders of the world. I think there are points of time in which we can still reference them, but I don't think we need to go to the Eiffel Tower. I don't think we need to go to the Griffith Observatory, Statue of Liberty. I mean, any of that kind of stuff. We just don't have to do it. It's what? What are you laughing
That
at for?
was very, very generous to put Griffith Observatory up there
I know.
with
I
the
was like,
Eiffel
I should
Tower.
probably put. We live in LA. I was like, maybe we should put something in there.
What I mean, the Hollywood sign, I guess, is like, yeah,
Yeah, that's probably more famous.
yeah, yeah.
But you get the point of just like
No, no, I
whenever you
totally
watch a
understand.
travel movie, it's all about those just major landmarks, and it's like there are so many small towns, crazy little villages where we can get really specific, smaller characters that help our contestants go through the scavenger hunt, rather than just having our contestants like doing a scene somewhere that everybody's gonna know.
Yeah, no, and I think that that probably gets us away from that area of like tokenism
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, we're just globetrotting to get a bunch of different places checked off. Like, obviously, Mission Impossible does this. There's a movie that has this big scene at the Burj Khalifa or something. And I think that there's just a lot of appropriation that can happen there. And there is probably is like a connected theme to this of cultural exploitation and appropriation. And you know, I used Indiana Jones as a reference, but I think I need to acknowledge that that's like a highly Eurocentric film that sort of has the aesthetics of like colonialism and like it honestly it reminds me of in recent years people have been talking a lot about the British Museum has tons of stolen artifacts from around the world, and it sort of is that Indiana Jones kind of like, oh, it's academic archaeology, but really it's just theft. And that's not something that we're doing with the treasure hunt because we're bearing the treasure. It's not a cultural artifact. But I think by traveling around the world, we can do a better service to highlighting actual cultures with dialect and nuance and foods and make sure that we bring on guest writers who can accurately depict their own culture and it's not just us here as white guys making decisions
Yeah,
about
trying to do what we can and just totally missing the mark completely.
right, right. And I think that's why that's where we'll lean on the fact that this is a writer's room.
I think we have the opportunity here to really put on some forgotten areas that aren't ever really utilized on screen.
And I think that that's why like a lot of the teams will need to have um, locals involved in the process.
Yeah,
And if we went to production, they should actually be locals, for
definitely.
instance.
That's part of what makes this so interesting to me is seeing where those culture breakdowns and not culture breakdowns, but cultural barriers and language barriers, where all of those come to play, and how our characters are able to work through that. You know, because obviously with the incumbent, it might just be a full steam ahead approach of just like, you have your linguist, but you're only trying to communicate with the people that are going to give you the most straight answer in the language in which they're able to speak.
Right.
Whereas the other teams can actually be trying to like give and take a little bit and spend a little bit more time with those locals. And I think that's what's going to make the I won't call it the courtesy team, just the team that is given the free entry by Linwood themselves to run this contest is going to be someone that we can latch onto. As sure, there'll be academics on it, but it'll be about people who really are willing to involve themselves and put their life experience on the line and really try to indulge in somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting if it was like a soccer team or something that was like that justified it being a group of people from around the world.
Yeah, as if like, so instead of just, one purely American team from one college, it's from different universities around the world, or just, one from each country, and you have 10 people total on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And each one of them is trying to overcome their own language barrier between one another, and then utilize that to communicate with locals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is something actually worth thinking about within that team itself. And that's why I think you said I was probably going to latch on, and I think I am, to this courtesy
sense.
team.
I mean, and just a shout out to some of the other obvious types of contestants we would have. There's going to be the rich people who are just doing this for sport, who basically have unlimited resources and are not trying to be judicious with their flights. They could send out, 10 different planes in different directions to basically just carpet bomb and try to find it. And it might be that person who, once they get close or they think they're close, they just strip mine. That could definitely be one character.
Oh, that could be how the incumbent made their original amount of money.
Okay. Oh,
just like they were digging for treasure, where they thought the treasure was, and
no,
they
weren't. What if they weren't even a contestant? What if a non-contestant finds it?
That could be an idea, actually, of just like something like that, or some in the complete flip of that would be if this contestant was digging somewhere, thinking they found it, and it just turns out they landed on a bunch of crude oil, and they're like, "Oh wait, I was looking for $10 million, but it turns out I just walked into $1 billion oil mine."
Right.
And then ended up turning that into money for the competition. Just keeping that going, or something crazy like that, something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. That is a pretty good origin story. If they just happened to cross the money, but that's how they were guaranteed that spot in the next year, and they basically credit to them for leveraging one winning to turn it into this whole flywheel of a business.
Yeah.
So that's something to have in mind. But there's also, I'm sure, going to be the solo competitors, like, just to pitch you on one other character idea. Like the retired private investigator, that like Mike from Breaking Bad, the person who has a certain skill set, either private investigator or ex-CIA or something, and they sort of liquidate their 401k just because they're bored in their retirement and they want to get an entrance and spend all their money on traveling around the world, puppy guarding, just following one of the teams or something like that.
Yeah, I think there needs to be somebody too who is literally hedging their bets on this competition. Like somebody who has spent 10 years, they knew what this was, what the overall treasure hunt was, and they're like, I need to save up for this. And they finally get their $100,000 that, they're in debt, but they were still putting this money away to the side to try to compete here because they think if I win this, I'll be set for life. So somebody who's willing to throw their entire life away on this singular mission.
Mm-hmm.
And if, they may be a solo team, and there may be a small team of people who've just put their money together, but this is like their last chance.
So in the same way that with Friend Zone, we would have different activities to satirize different things, we can have many opportunities for satire by designing the different teams because, you know, there's this big number of contestants that we start with, but after the first clue, maybe there's only 20, and maybe we meet a few of those, but then after the next one, we're down to sort of 5, and then by the end, we're down to just 2.
Yeah, I agree. Which I think this is a good transition now then into themes.
Okay.
Because while we're looking at things that we can be satirizing, let's look at just our general feelings on the story as a whole and what we're trying to talk about.
Right.
Now, I'll make the distinction right now that for me personally, I'm not, it's probably going to sound bad to screenwriters that may be listening, but I'm not a theme first writer. For
Mhm.
me, I'm much more about finding a character or an event or something that could have happened and playing that out, writing that story, seeing what happens, and then finding the theme along the way, and then altering what I've already written to kind of match that theme. I let it kind of present itself to me. But for you, I don't know if you necessarily look for the themes first. I know you said you're always going to look a little bit at class dynamics, and I think climate is always going to be one that you're also evaluating and putting into your stories. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you look, if you already have some themes in mind of what you want to look at for this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that those types of things are just baked into my gut feeling and that I don't have to think about it too much. And by the time I've written something, it's easy to look back and be like, that is something that I definitely would have written because there's total climate implications there. So I think for this story, there's a few things that are quite obvious. There is the capitalism behind a for-profit treasure hunt, which is basically the twist on the classic treasure hunt that we're doing. Uh, so we can't quite ignore that. We can't quite ignore that there's money on the line, money to get yourself in the race. There's generational wealth of the incumbent. I think that I was wrong to dismiss that in our previous discussion.
Yeah.
Um, I obviously came up with this idea because I think a lot about class and capitalism and stuff. So, yeah, I'm not going to lean away from that. That's very, very obvious. But because this is supposed to be a global, multicultural story, I think that there's something obvious about probably like tourism is the better, more relatable version of this,
Yeah,
where
because that captures everything that we're kind of looking at. Because tourism has, I think, two massive impacts. Which it's not that it's an overall awful thing by any means. No, I mean, we have the ability now to go travel the world and see other cultures. We might as well. But like you were saying earlier, there's that tokenism
yeah,
of not actually enjoying the culture itself, just going for the Instagram photo and then heading on out or
hmm
whatever it is. And, these places that have been completely overrun. And this is something that might happen in the story of, it could be a small town where a clue is that does not have the capacity to welcome, even if it's like 300 teams. And then you have all of these people who come from around the world and just are not appreciating or understanding the way that this specific town operates.
hmm
So I think there is that section of tourism, but then there's also the environmental impact of tourism and the just carbon emissions from flying and all that kind of stuff. These wealthy people are probably not going to be flying commercial, especially the incumbent is definitely not going to be flying commercial and with all the
hmm
vehicles they have, the helicopters and so on.
yeah. Which I should also like. Sustainable tourism is one thing, but a boom and bust is another. And we've already made the comparisons to the World Cup and the Olympics. Do you need a better example of like a boom and bust, like a enormous environmental footprint, all to just bring everybody to one location just for these stadiums that are going to fall into disrepair and there's no need for that capacity. The whole thing could turn into an allegory if we paid too much attention to theme. But if we're going to invite a lot of ethical gray areas into the story, um, we're going to leave more room for other people to interpret things. And I think that by having guest writers on and reading our comments and taking them to heart, we're going to keep stirring the pot and adding complexity and depth to the story so that
Definitely.
it doesn't just turn into an allegory of capitalism, which would be a choice.
And
But
it's just supposed to be fun. It's just supposed to be fun to see
I take
the
it back. I take it back. It's not supposed to be fun.
okay, okay. But
This is
the
serious.
the challenge is the characters themselves, the banter in between them, all that stuff is meant to be. I mean, the idea as a whole is ludicrous in a way of this billion-dollar industry. We'll suppose, it may be because of how many years it's been run. This Linwood itself is so wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So to have this exist and have these types of people who would be competing in it, they would be some really kind of insane people.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing where they're going to go. Oh, this is a good transition. I just remembered this point I want to make. So we talked a little bit about in the first episode about violence in the story itself.
Which you were watching back the first episode 10 times while we were editing it. You're pretty into the violence aspect of this story, and we're gonna have to...
I'm not. It's not that I'm into the violence. It's just I want to make this more adult than when you hear treasure hunt.
Okay.
When you think of Pirates of the Caribbean, you think of National Treasure. They're kid centric. They're meant for a younger audience. And not that we need to be R-rated by any means, but I think if we were to take this completely seriously, completely like just for what it is, there would be people really trying to harm the other teams around them. Because if it was a foot race between you and another person for $10 million and you see all these obstacles in front of you and them, you would be trying to push them into it in every way. You would be trying to trip them up to get that slight advantage. So while it doesn't necessarily need to be, we're watching people literally kill one another, there are things like being left behind or, just being helped or not helped out of a serious injury or whatever it is.
Choosing not to rescue somebody is a much softer form of violence. And we're going to it's a better thematic conversation when we have forms of violence and, more direct physical forms of violence.
Yeah.
Which I think that this is enough money on the line that it'll be justified. It'll make sense, especially when you're in international waters or in the Arctic Circle or,
And the things are dangerous. I mean, if you think
Yeah.
about it, the hunt itself is dangerous. If you have the money, you're taking helicopters or you're trying to excavate a small little area or, you're in the middle of a street or you're driving or whatever it is, and you're driving underneath high stress scenarios against the clock. Obviously, you're going to be making mistakes, and those mistakes can have very physical, corporeal punishments.
Mm-hmm.
And with all that, I think I kind of want to leave it there.
Okay.
I think we've hit enough general points to kind of lead a broad outline of what we're going to be looking at, but I think I'm kind of ready to start jumping into some specifics.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. And I would say, we're in the conclusion now. Is there anything from reactions of the first episode that you want to circle back to?
No, I really primarily just want to say thank you to everybody who contributed and who went to the polls and really sent us your opinions. A lot of fans were my friends and my mom.
Right. For now.
But they listened through it all the way and they gave us actual great feedback, which is why we now have this third angle and why we have a little bit better sound quality. So I want to say thank you to all that, and I hope you guys are ready to see where this all goes because it's only going to get more and more fun from here.
Yeah. And I will bite my tongue and not tease the potential guest writers we'll have on, but I'll just say that there will be some themed episodes with guest writers, some other writing exercises that we will definitely do. I think it'll be a couple more episodes of laying out some foundations before we can start to experiment and sort of have the bumpers on. And but I would stay tuned for all of that more interesting stuff. But now that the idea is chosen, we can actually open up the floodgates to comments, DMs. What are your ideas for Linwood Treasure Company based on the framework that we laid out in today's episode? And nothing that we said today is locked.
Nothing we say in any episode until the table read is locked.
Yeah.
It can all constantly change until we get that final draft. Everything is up for grabs. And if somebody in the audience has a genius idea of something that we're not seeing clearly, then it could very well make its way into the script and be one of those things that changes this entire project for all of us.
Yeah. So comment section on this episode on YouTube or DM us at Plot Matrix on Instagram. Give us your thoughts, and in future episodes, we'll be highlighting your comments and messages on the show.
Absolutely. You want to read us out?
Sure. So you can fly.
Dummy.
Thank you for listening to Plot Matrix. You can find new episodes every single Thursday on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And definitely engage with us at Plot Matrix on Instagram. Your hosts are us, myself, Jackson Casimiro, and Brian Smail III. Special thanks this week to everybody who voted in the polls and sent us messages. Huge, huge help. This podcast is a production of Lunation Lab. Learn more at lunationlab.com.
See you next Thursday.